Hello, everybody. My name is David Andrejek. I'm a student at National Louis University, and I am currently taking class EPS511. And the book we use is called Educational Psychology Reflection for Action. And the purpose of this video is to do a chapter reflection or chapter teach back on Chapter 8, which is called Social Learning Theory, Complex Cognition, and Social Constructivism. I'm going to cover three main topics, and unsurprisingly, those three topics are the name of the three topics in the title of the chapter. So starting with the first one, social learning theory. Social learning theory is basically the theory of how we learn from other people. And we do this by learning from them vicariously through their experience. So vicarious means learning from another person and not from something that you're doing yourself. And then, so based on that, we could learn not only vicariously through the other people's actions and what they're doing, but we learn vicariously reinforcements and vicarious punishments, which is if someone does something and something good comes as a result, such as a student tells a teacher that other students are misbehaving, and then that student is given an attaboy for saying that, other students would be more likely to do that action as well. On the other hand, the students who are misbehaving might get scolded by the teacher, and that would be vicarious punishment to an outside observer, which would make that observer less likely to perform the misbehaving. A personal example of watching someone learn vicariously, well, actually, I heard this story. It involved my son. When he was very young, his mother, who is Italian, would always make him pasta for lunch, and she'd feed it to him with a spoon. And in one of his preschool field trips, they went out somewhere, and they had a packed lunch, and he opened up his packed lunch, and there was a sandwich there. He'd never eaten a sandwich before. And my wife was with him, and he said, "Mama, where's my pasta?" And she said, "Just eat the sandwich." So he picked it up. He looked at the other people, saw what they were doing, realized they were feeding themselves or putting into their mouth, no spoon needed, and he was able to do it. And ever since, he's been eating the sandwiches just fine. Anyway, there are four things that come through vicarious experience. One of them is you could learn a new behavior, such as how to eat a sandwich. Another one is a new consequence, whether it is a reinforcement or a punishment. Performance expectations. You could learn what is expected based on observing others as well. And then you could also learn self-talk, which is by observing how different people talk to themselves when they're doing a task to see if you could gauge if they think it's going to be easy, if they think it's going to be difficult, and whatnot. And the final thing within social learning theory is I want to discuss modeling, which is learning by observing a model. And there's three subtopics under this. One of them is observational learning, which is specifically learning by observing other individuals, which is kind of what we talked about, the vicarious learning. Another learning is inhibitory. No, this isn't necessarily learning, but it's an effect of a model. It's inhibitory and disinhibitory effects. So you're not actually learning a new behavior, but the likelihood of doing a previously learned behavior is enhanced. And then the last one is response facilitation effect. And this is basically you're doing something you already learned how to do, but you're doing it based on your observations of what other people are doing. And I have a great example of that. When I was in college, me and a group of people always used to play a prank on people where we would sit together and we say, okay, we're going to tell the light bulb joke. The light bulb joke is a fake joke that doesn't have any real meaning, but when I say the punchline, everyone who's in on the joke starts to laugh, but it makes no sense. And then our victim of the prank in this case sits in a room with everyone laughing, has no idea what the joke is about, but he starts to laugh anyway. Then when he starts to laugh because he's ashamed to not understand it, that makes everyone else laugh even more, which that's kind of the inhibitory and disinhibitory effects. And it's kind of a cycle until the point where we eventually give in and tell the person what the joke is about. At that point, we say, the next person who comes in the room, we're going to do the same thing to. So he gets to be on the joke too. Anyway, so the social learning theory excerpts that we just discussed are on page 256 to 259 of the text. The next topic is complex cognition. So complex cognition involves a handful of subcategories. One of them is metacognition, which is just the thinking about your own thinking. Probably something that is only innate to human beings and no other species. Then there's self-explanation, which is explaining to yourself such that you could explain to yourself the depth of your understanding of a given topic. Then there's reasoning and argumentation, which is basically the process of taking a position, providing reasons for that position, and then presenting counter arguments. There's 4 subcategories to reasoning and argumentation, and it would be a claim, a warrant, a reason, and your evidence backing. And in the book, they give an example. They say Mars has canals, which is their claim. And then their reason is that several astronomers have witnessed this and say that there are canals on Mars. So the warrant is if several astronomers report seeing them on Mars, then they're probably on Mars. And the evidence backing is as simple as observation with your eyes is pretty straightforward and not subject to errors. Moving on with other parts of complex cognition, there's also problem solving, which you have a current situation, you have an end goal, and problem solving is the process that gets you from where you're at to where you're going to be. And there's 5 steps in this process. It's identifying the problem or opportunity, defining goals and representing the problem, exploring possible solutions and strategies, anticipating or acting, and then finally looking back. And the final step is in complex cognition is transfer, which is basically the ability to take the information that you just gained and able to use it in your day-to-day life and perhaps in new categories that you weren't originally learning it in. And that is basically what we spend most of our life doing, taking the knowledge that we learned and transferring it to some other task. So this section on complex cognition is covered in the text on pages 262 to 268. And the final topic is social constructivism. Social constructivism is basically a sociological theory of knowledge which prescribes that human development is socially situated and knowledge is constructed through interaction with others. And one cornerstone of this is a concept called scaffolding, which we've actually talked about in class a few times. And scaffolding is basically the guidance, support, and tutelage provided by a teacher during social interaction designed to advance the student's current level of skill and understanding. So why do they call it scaffolding? Well, basically, if you have a little tree here, a seedling so to speak, and he could easily blow in the wind, you might put posts in the ground to help support him. Well, those would be considered scaffolding. And that's what we do with people as well. So, scaffolding is basically the mentoring from a skilled person of a person that is not skilled in that particular area. And as the learner grasps the skills, the mentor needs to fade away, bring his support and guidance away so as to let the learner grow on his own. And this basically involves, there's three, the mentor engages in three activities. One of them is channeling the activity, the other is focusing the attention of the learner, and then finally is modeling. So, there's a very good example of something that I did with my daughter. A couple years ago, or a few years ago, she didn't know how to ride a bike, and I wanted to teach her. The traditional ways of training wheels and running behind her was just not working. There was just too much fear, and I had to come up with a new way. So I got a very small bike, and the first thing I did was I had my son show her, as in being a model, what I wanted her to do. And that was, we were at a hill, he got on the bike, he rolled down the hill, and he just had his legs off to the side. That's what my daughter did. So he was the model, and now we focused and channeled the activity. So my daughter got on the bike, she put her legs out, and she rolled down. This was just to teach her how to stay balanced. The next thing, she went back up on the hill. I told her, put your feet on the pedals and don't move them. Now she got used to the idea of having her feet on the pedals. She rolled down the hill. As it slowed down, she put her legs out. Then the final step, start pedaling. And once you start pedaling, just keep going until you can't go anymore. And before you knew it, she was pedaling down the hill. It wasn't actually moving her because the hill was. As she got to flat land, she just kept pedaling. Voila, in a few minutes she knew how to ride a bike. So the 5 features of appropriate instructional scaffolding are as follows. The first, intentionality. Each activity should help the learner accomplish the task. So in my example, every single thing I had her do had the goal of teaching her how to get the task done in steps. The appropriateness is the second feature, which is basically the task needs to be hard enough such that the learner needs help. In the bike riding case, we all certainly knew that was the case. Structure is the third feature, which is the teacher models strategies on how to approach the task. In this case, I had my son model it for her, explain what was going to happen in each step. The fourth feature is collaboration, which is basically, in this example, me and my daughter were on a team, and I was not necessarily her judge. We both succeeded or failed depending on the outcome, and not just one of us. And then the last one is the last feature is internalization, which is basically the teacher's support is gradually withdrawn so that the learner could perform on her own. And in this case, as soon as my daughter got how to do the bike, I just pulled away and she rode that bike like crazy that whole evening and the whole next morning. This section that I just discussed is in the textbook on page 268 to 273. So this concludes my Teach Back video on chapter 8. I appreciate you watching and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.